Hello and welcome back to the show. My name is Larnie and I am so glad that you are here because today we are going to talk about something that has been on my mind for a while. In this season, we are discussing topics that just don't get a lot of airtime, things that we probably could spend a little bit more time discussing or thinking about or really considering our own approach to them. And so last week we were talking about friendship. This week we are talking about being selfish. Now, when you hear the word selfish, what comes to mind? Maybe you think about someone who slighted you in the past. Maybe you think about someone who doesn't care about other people. Maybe you think about someone who kind of like hoards all of the good things that they have and doesn't want to share them with others. Maybe you think about something else. But I think it's really important to start this podcast by asking you how you feel about the term selfish or how you feel about the idea of being selfish. Because I think for most of us, for probably all of us, we have been taught that being selfish is actually a really bad thing. We've been taught that being selfish is the thing that you should never be. You should, always strive to give abundantly and generously and look out for other people and put other people's needs as a priority. And today, we're going to deconstruct that a little bit. So let's dive all the way in. As I'm always thinking about things that we can talk about on the podcast, this was a subject that I thought, you know what, I really feel that I am redefining my own relationship to this word, and maybe you would also like the option to reconsider what this means for you. And I was inspired by this because I was listening. So my mom and I, we take a walk every morning. I think you probably know by now. I've been living at home with my mom for almost a year, which is so crazy. And we take a walk every morning and we listen to an Abraham Hicks YouTube video or recording or something. We've been very much in our law of attraction bag and it's wonderful. And one day, Abraham was talking about how selfishness is really misunderstood. That if you feel that somebody else is selfish, this was the explanation that they gave. If you feel that somebody else is being selfish, it's actually kind of a good opportunity to reflect on why you think they should have put your needs before their own. And that's really the little like wedge that I want us to zoom in on right now. Because I think when you've thought in the past, or, when you've experienced someone being selfish in the past, usually it's because they're doing something that negatively impacts you. And you would prefer for them to be doing something that positively impacts you. And that's normal, right? That makes sense. We're humans. We all want everyone to treat us kindly. We all want everyone to treat us with respect and with thoughtfulness. But I think sometimes we forget that it actually isn't anyone else's responsibility to make us feel good. Now, that being said, we don't have to engage with people who make us feel bad, but it's also not their responsibility to make us feel good. So, what would it look like if in your life you started being more selfish? And what do I mean by that? I mean, what would it look like if you started prioritizing what you needed? What would it look like if you started putting your desires at the forefront of your focus for the day? Now, you might be listening and think, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do that. I'm responsible for these people, or I've got these obligations. And okay, great. I hear that. But I'm just asking this question because if you are in a place in your life that you are feeling unhappy, that you are feeling like you are unloved, that you are feeling like you've been kind of cast aside, usually, and I say this with like 7 years in wellness, so and specifically 4 in hypnotherapy under my belt, that usually if you are feeling unloved by other people, it is because you have not been giving yourself the love that you desire first. And sometimes that can be a bit of a hard pill to swallow. Sometimes it's easier for us to blame someone else. Sometimes it's easier for us to say, oh, well, that person is selfish. They, canceled out on, our dinner at the last minute, or they decided they were going to go away for the weekend and now I don't have anyone to spend my time with, or whatever. It's easier It is. It's so much easier to say that someone else's behavior is the reason that you are feeling the way that you're feeling. And you can say that. But then I also encourage you to ask yourself what's really going on underneath of that. And is that other person's choice really what the problem is? Or is there something else? Now, you could look at me straight in the face and say, Larnie, it is absolutely that other person. I have nothing to do with this. Okay. But you're in the situation, right? So you must have something to do with it. And I understand we're really like ripping off the band-aids today. I am not playing around with this conversation because I think it's really, really powerful when you start to get the hang of what it means to prioritize yourself and what it means to deprioritize and defocus or shift your focus from other people's behavior. And so that's why we're going all the way in. So here's the first thing that I want us to really sit with. First of all, if there are people in your life who you feel are not treating you well, by all means, do not interact with them. I mean, that's first and foremost, you don't have to have a relationship with someone who treats you horribly. That's not what we're saying here. But when it comes to the way that you behave in your life, that's what we're really focusing on with this concept of selfishness. So, if you are unhappy with something in your life, let's say you're unhappy with your job, let's say you're unhappy with the amount of money that you have in the bank, let's say you're unhappy with the presence or lack thereof of romantic relationships in your life, or of friendships in your life, or of downtime in your life, whatever it is that you're unhappy with, I invite you first to acknowledge that you're unhappy with it. Like, just be clear for yourself. This just isn't working for me. Because often I think, especially if we have something in common, you probably want to always think that you've made the right choice, that, you've done your absolute best, that like you have no mistakes, no regrets. And you don't have to have any regrets. But if we want to change something, it's important to know that this isn't working. So first, I would say identify what isn't working and then give yourself a chance to explore it. Like, what specifically isn't working about this thing? And there is a good chance that you have been prioritizing other people in a way that has negatively impacted this. So let's say that you are unhappy with your job right now. Maybe you don't like the people that you work with, or maybe it's really stressful, or whatever. How can you take your focus away from those external problems and refocus it on yourself? Focusing on yourself. We talked about selfishness at the beginning, right? How can you be ruthlessly selfish to the point that those other people and their problems don't actually impact you? How can you shift your focus so that you can show up at your job on the days that you work there and say, I'm here. This is where I'm coming from. I'm in a good place. I refuse to be impacted by the foolishness. Right? And do you see how in that way, selfishness is actually quite empowering? Do you see how by decentering those other people and centering yourself, you get your agency back, you get your energy back, you get your perspective back, because you're not this like leaky bucket anymore. You have kind of shored up any of those holes and patched everything up so that you're coming from a solid place. And the other people, they can do the other people thing. You don't have to be involved with that. You see what I mean? We can talk about this with relationships too. Let's say there is a romantic relationship that you want to work out, or that you're not sure if it's going to work out. There's like some uncertainty, right? What would it be like to put yourself first? All the time that you spend thinking about that person, all the time that you spend wondering and this and that about what's going to happen, what if instead you spent that time on you? What if you spent that time doing things that make you feel good? What if you allowed yourself to be more selfish and said, you know what? Whatever's going to happen with this relationship is what's going to happen, and it's going to work out. And in the meantime, I am going to focus on myself. Once again, selfishness allowing us to shift out of the noise and the distraction and the chaos and into a place of presence and groundedness and ease. And you might be listening to this and think, okay, well, that's all very well and good, but it's not so easy to do that. And my question to you then is why? It's an honest question. Why is it difficult to shift your perspective away from the people that are draining you or stressing you out or making you anxious? Why is it difficult to shift your focus from them and over onto you? What is it about yourself that you don't really want to address? What is it about yourself that you don't feel equipped to look at or navigate? I hear it all the time. I have so many clients that come to me and they're like, oh, I don't really know what's going to come up in the session, but I'm here. I think I'm ready. What is it that you are not looking at? And do you have some sort of underlying beliefs that makes you think it's actually better for you to focus on the distraction and the noise and the chaos out there than to focus on yourself? What would happen if you put yourself first always? And I get it. Every one of us has different responsibilities. Every one of us has a different life situation. Like the way that I'm able to put myself first living at home is going to be different than the way that I am able to put myself first when I am not living at home, right? Like I'm not saying there is one way to do this. Actually, I'm saying, given the circumstances that you are in, genuinely, what can you do? And the thing is, there are so many ways that we can start putting ourselves first and being more selfish. Let's say you live with a bunch of other people, whether it's children, whether it's a partner, whether it's parents, like whoever it is. You live with other people. Your entire space is not your own. How can you carve out 5 minutes for yourself? What does that look like? And how can you do that in a way that doesn't feel violent towards you or to anyone else? And here's the thing, I think a lot of the time, we, especially as women, are afraid to put ourselves first because we're afraid of how other people are going to respond. But let me tell you something. Most other people are focused on themselves. Most other people are focused on what they need, what they're doing. Is it really going to cause a catastrophic event if you take 5 minutes to set yourself up to have a better day? Like, is it really going to do that? Because that's the thing. I'm not saying you need to have this like 2 hour morning routine in order to put yourself first. I'm not saying you need to bypass all your responsibilities in order to put yourself first. What I'm saying is that within the resources that you have at your disposal, there are absolutely ways that you can shift your attention because that's what it is, right? It's not about going and spending $200 on a facial. It's not about going and booking a vacation to St. Lucia just for yourself. Like, this is about how can you shift your awareness? And I keep doing it. If you're watching, if you're listening to this, you won't see this, but I'm doing this little like switch with my fingers because it's so small, but it can have such a big impact. And when you start by putting yourself first, that creates a different tone for your day. That creates a different tone for how you show up for the people who rely on you. That creates a different tone for how you talk to yourself while you're walking or working out or driving in your car or riding on a train. That creates a whole different energy from which you are moving through your life. And the beliefs that you have about yourself when you are feeling good are going to rise to the surface a lot more if you are putting yourself first than if you are trying to access those beliefs after you have completely ignored yourself and tended to everybody else and burnt yourself out. Like, think about it. If you go through your day putting everyone else first, forgetting to eat, not picking out an outfit that you feel good in, doing all of these things because you've got to be here, there, and over there, you're putting out all the fires externally. At the end of the day, it's going to be really difficult to sit down and be like, I love being alive. Everything is working out for me. I feel so good. Like it's going to be so much harder to reach there. And actually, you might start to doubt if those things are even true. Now, there is a part of you that knows they're true, right? There is a part of you that loves these elements of your life. There's a part of you that knows everything can feel so good and so aligned and so magnetic, but it's going to be really hard to reach that part of yourself if you have consistently negated that part of yourself all day, every day for decades. You see what I mean? And so this notion of reclaiming selfishness, in fact, it's actually the furthest thing from selfish because when you prioritize yourself, when you exercise a little bit more selfishness about what it is that you need to fill yourself up, you actually are able to move through the world in such a different way, positively impacting everyone you come across. And I think that's what we all want, right? And I think that's why there's such this conditioning to overextend, to always be doing the most because we want other people to be happy. We want other people to like us. We want to be accepted. Of course you do. But the irony is, all of that happens so much easier when you show up feeling good about yourself. No one is going to feel happy if you show up resentful that you're there. And the thing is, not everybody even knows anything about this, right? For some people, this conversation that we're having is going to be like ancient Greek. Like it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. But they're still going to feel it because our entire world operates off of feelings. It really does. Our world, it operates off of the vibration, the energy, the emotion that you have inside of you. So you don't even have to say anything about it. If you walk into a room and you're frustrated and you're overwhelmed and you're annoyed that you're there because you'd rather be doing something else and you didn't get to do the thing that you wanted to, people feel that, even if it's not conscious, and they respond to that because our subconscious, all of our subconsciouses are always operating, right? We are always picking up cues. We are always, if someone's in a bad mood and they walk into the room, you're like, ooh, I don't know about that. Versus when someone feels so good about themselves and they walk into a room, you're like, dang, you want to be near them. You want to drink whatever Kool-Aid they've been drinking, you know? And so if you actually want to be not selfish, if you actually want to help people in the way that you say you do, if you actually want to make that positive, lasting impact in the world, selfishness is required. It is. It really, really is. And so I think the sooner we can decondition ourselves about this resistance that we have towards selfishness, the sooner we can actually create the change that we want. The sooner that we can actually step into the life that we want. The sooner that we can just enjoy ourselves because that's what we're here for. We're here to enjoy. We're here to feel good. We're here to experience everything that we want without guilt or shame or anything else. And so if you are really struggling with this concept, I invite you to ask yourself truly what is holding you back? Truly, what is it about being more selfish that you are bristling against? Write it down, make it clear for yourself what that is, maybe where it's come from. We do this often in hypnotherapy, not to linger on what we don't want, but to acknowledge it, to witness it, and then to transform it into what we do want. Because most of the time, we don't want to be considered selfish because we don't want to like hurt other people or we don't want to look bad. Well, walking into that room resentful doesn't make you look good, does it? So, I mean, you see what I mean? Like, you really do get to choose. And you can tell yourself any story you want. You can tell yourself any story. They're all the same. No one story is the only correct story to have. It's how you feel about it. It's how you feel about the things that you believe. It's how you feel about the things that you say. It's how you feel about everything that's going on inside of you. So, I invite you to explore a little bit with what it means and what it looks like to be a little bit more selfish. In your friendships, this could look like deciding that a certain gathering is for or not for you, and then just communicating that and moving on. It could be deciding in your romantic relationships, you know what? I actually don't want to spend my time obsessing about this person anymore. I'm going to let things be the way that they are. I'm going to trust that I'm going to get the information that I need. And in the meantime, I'm going to do the things that I want to do. I'm going to go feel good. I really think, and this is just my definition, so you can define it however you want, but I really think being selfish really comes down to choosing how you want to feel and committing to that. Even if that makes someone else unhappy. You know what? Some people are not going to be okay with the fact that you are choosing your joy. They just aren't. Because you know what? They haven't chosen their joy. And so it really isn't about you, it's about what they haven't done for themselves. And I think about that. I think about that whenever I have seen something that I've been like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're doing that. Or anytime I felt jealous or anytime I felt those kind of like negative emotions come up, literally 100% of the time, It is because I have not given myself the chance to do that, or I have not allowed myself to believe I can do that. That's it. Literally it. When you know that you can do that thing that someone else is doing, you don't feel jealous. You don't feel resentful. Maybe you're like, yeah, I wish they had, communicated that they weren't going to show up beforehand. Maybe you're like, yeah, it would have been nice if this had been different, but you don't dwell in that. And yeah, maybe you don't continue those relationships with people who are always rubbing you the wrong way. But maybe you find that you can just move forward and not hold on to any bitterness or judgment or any of that because you're like, okay, cool. They're doing what works for them. I'm going to do what works for me. And the thing is, I know I operate under the belief that most of the time people are really wanting to do what's best. They really want to be good people. Yeah, you're going to get some people who are not trying to be good. That's a whole other conversation. But most of the time, people want to be good in the world. And I operate with that belief because I know that that brings people into my world who also feel the same way. And if I know that someone has mostly been trying to do their best, even if what they have done doesn't feel good to me in that moment, I can separate myself from that and say, you know what? Yeah, this doesn't actually work for me. I am going to move forward in this other direction, but I'm not going to keep replaying why I think that person is wrong. I'm not going to keep like centering them when I can center myself. It's just not worth it. It's just not fun. It just doesn't feel good. And it can be really easy. None of this, and this is another thing that I think is really important to underline, is that none of this has to be hard. None of this has to take a long time. None of this has to be like overly painful. Yes, you will have big emotions come up. That's normal. You're a human. You're going to experience the whole range of emotions, but none of this has to feel permanent. None of this has to be something that you replay over and over and over again. I read somewhere about how we really only feel an emotion for like 90 seconds. After that, what we feel is a replaying of our experience of that emotion. So you can let yourself feel the anger. That anger is so normal and natural and valid in whatever situation it is. But if you really just let yourself feel it and then don't spend all your time replaying it and you refocus on yourself, you refocus on how you want to feel, you let yourself be selfish and say, ooh, okay, felt that. That's not what I want to feel. Let me feel something else. Then you move on. You move on. It can be simple. It really can. I think there's a lot of discussion about healing and that it's so difficult and painful and has to take a long time. And I'm just here to say that it really doesn't have to. It just doesn't. So let this be the permission that maybe you were waiting for to be a little more selfish. You can communicate what you're doing compassionately. You can communicate what your needs are, but be committed to your needs. Be committed to putting yourself first. And even just play around with this for like a week or two. Maybe you decide like the next 2 weeks, you're really going to focus on being a little bit more selfish, really putting yourself first, really prioritizing your needs, and notice what starts to change. Because I think you're going to be surprised. I really think you're going to be surprised at what comes up when you put yourself first and you really practice doing that. So I will leave you with that. If this is something that you go and do, send me a DM. I would love to know. I would love to hear how it goes putting yourself first. Ooh, I'm excited. I'm like, let's do this. Let me know if you like this. Leave a 5-star review. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we love to grow this fam. Share this with someone if you think that someone in your life could really benefit from this little message, this little food for thought today. And stay hydrated. It's hot out there, folks. All right. Thanks so much for showing up here today. I will see you in the next podcast. Bye.